and welcome to episode 65 of the Comic Watchers Show. I'm your host, Matt. With me, as always, is Nicholas Osborne and mighty Mike Eakins, hailing from the East Coast. Gentlemen, how are we doing tonight?
Well, over here we're kind of kayaking through water, as I'm sure the rest of the country is. But overall, we're good to go over here.
Sweet,
pretty much same in Texas. Lots of rain, lots of gross stuff. Staying inside.
Yeah. We finally got a little bit of snow here in the great state of Oklahoma. It was exciting for a minute, and now it's 40 degrees again, and it's all gone. So So
I missed the snow.
It'll be 70 this weekend. So we've got some pretty cool books that we're going to talk about this week. We are going in for week 2 of our big Justice League changeover coverage. We're talking about Justice League number 40, and then we're going to dive right into the Marvel side of things and talk about X-Men Fantastic Four numero uno of 4. But first, of course, we've got the news of the week from Mr. Scoop Johnson himself.
Yes, sir. So we got some DC news here. DC is expanding its original programming with the DC Daily Podcast, this is kind of cool because you don't necessarily need to, well, not necessarily, you don't need to subscribe to DC Universe in order to get this podcast. And it's gonna, podcasts are podcasts, right? Unless they're the Comic Watchers podcast, and then it's kind of, cream of the crop type stuff. But no, they're gonna have special guests. They're gonna talk about exclusives. They're gonna talk about all the news, everything DC that you are gonna want to know is gonna be on this podcast. And like I said, you don't need to even subscribe to DC Universe to tune in and to get this podcast. So that's something to definitely keep an eye out for, and something that I'm definitely gonna check out from time to time. So it looks really good. As far as, basic news and stuff, we're just going to stroll right into some first looks and some sneak peeks that are on the website. First, we got Gwen Stacy 4. Number 1, I believe, comes out next week. However, we do got that sneak peek up on the website. Gwen teams up with the original X-Men. This should be pretty rad. They got some different covers going on. The cover that we have up on the site is Marvel Girl and Gwen Stacy kind of being shielded from a pumpkin bomb. So that's something to kind of check out. Definitely that series is going to be really cool. It's a limited series from Marvel. It's going to kind of take a look back and give us a background of Gwen that we haven't had, and it promises to be something different. Just being a spider nerd myself, I'm going to automatically flock to that and just put that in the box and stuff like that. But it's going to be good. Definitely check that out for sure.
Because it's always worth mentioning that for all her historical importance, the biggest thing Gwen Stacy ever did was die. As far as a character in her own right, she's pretty underdeveloped. She's Peter Parker's token girlfriend in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And so I'm really happy to see Marvel embracing this idea of exploring this character finally.
Yeah.
So power to them. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be good. And I was just before the show, I was kind of engaging in some conversations on Reddit. And just going back and forth, and just kind of like pretty much what you said, Matt, just like we finally, this character that how many people grew up with the story of Gwen Stacy and stuff like that. And we finally get to come into her own, where it's not a Spider-Gwen whom I love, but an actual Gwen Stacy story. So this should be really cool. This should be definitely cool. Check it out. Another exciting news that we have is AWA is a brand new company that's coming out with a Red Border, with their first series. It's called the Red Border Horror Series. It's about a young middle-class Mexican couple targeted by the Juarez cartel. They're fleeing the border, and they go into Texas, and the people that they're rescued by, in due time, they realize that there's not just skeletons in their closet that they're pretty much an army of assassins that they have to battle against kind of for their freedom. So this looks really cool.
That does sound really cool.
Yeah, it's a brand new company, and this looks like really, really good. So I can not stress this enough, to make sure you hit the website, check this book out. This looks really, really good. And something that we're going to revisit again, that we actually did a first look a few shows back about Boom, King of Nowhere #1. We got that first look up on the website. We originally broke the story. It's about Dennis. He's a drunken low-life guy. He kind of wakes up in the outskirts of a mysterious village called Nowhere. And he is he kind of has amnesia, and he just starts to regain his memories, and everything kind of catches up to him, and he kind of is just battling to get out of this area and regain his own sense of life. So this looks really, really good. And Boom always produces a pretty decent product, as far as in my opinion as well. So that's really, really good. And we'll save the best for last. Is in Comic Watch exclusive, The Spirits of Ghost Rider, Mother of Demons 1. This looks absolutely amazing. If any type of Ghost Rider fan, any type of Vengeance fan, Spirits Vengeance, whatever you got going on, Roland Bosch is coming back. He's doing the art. That's up on the website right now. Make sure you absolutely got to check this out. I mean, this is a book not to be missed, and it's exclusive. So that means what, kids? That means Comic Watch was the first to kind of spread it out and get it out to the masses. So that's really good. Now, that's it for the news, which means what, Matt? What does that mean?
That means it might possibly be time for the Week in Liefeld.
The Week in Liefeld
this week.
So basically, we are going to be, as Matt said, as I said, week after week since we've been doing this Week in Liefeld, that we are pro Liefeld here at Comic Watch. We just do it because he is an absolute stunning follow on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and whatever you can follow the Rob Father on. It's been a mild week. So I would say the best Rob news that we have is head on over to his Instagram for the video and celebrating Image's anniversary. He goes through a bunch of different stuff. It's really cool. Kudos going out to Rob. And we can kind of maybe spend minute and a half, whatever you got going on, talking about Captain America, the end, that Rob has jumped on, and the mistaken edit that they have published, oopsie, that Rob has jumped on and stuff like that. So
to a little background on this, to clarify, Liefeld didn't have anything to do with the creation of this comic.
No, he did not. He did not.
Written and drawn by Eric Liefeld for Marvel, of course. And on the last page of the comic, a comic by Marvel about one of their cornerstone properties, Captain America, misattributed his creation to Stan Lee and Jack Kirby.
Right.
It's quite egregious because as pretty much everyone in fandom knows, it's actually Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. Now, somehow this went past multiple levels of editors, went to the presses, shipped, made it to shelves, made it to your hot little hands, and nobody caught it.
Nope, not a one.
That's not a good look, guys.
No.
Shame on you, Marvel. And yeah, Rob very, very rightfully jumped all over this. And this is one of those times where, this may shock you to hear. Liefeld has a big mouth. And this time it was warranted. My God, Marvel, get it together. That is so shameful.
Yeah.
Two of the editors that were involved have, publicly gone online and apologized. And I mean, that's fine after the fact. But you can't tell me nobody Marvel realized this before the thing shipped. You know, it would have behooved them to get out in front of this and say, "Hey, we screwed up. Our bad."
No.
Save a little face, but you know.
Well, I mean, this is typical Marvel type of thing where it's just, flood the shelves, and then kind of almost worry about it later type deal, And the thing is, I mean, how do you make this type of mistake? I can understand missing a period, colon for a semicolon type of deal, there, and there. But
for sure.
how do you miss this? I mean, this isn't really an error, but this is something that is huge. I mean, this
isn't some tiny little thing that they screwed up, like you said, a missing period. This is one of the seminal characters in the history of not just Marvel but all of comics.
Right,
having creators listed wrong.
Right,
it feeds into the decades-old Stan versus Jack beef, and the Kirby partisans in that argument are jumping all over this as misappropriation and misrepresentation. And I mean, geez, what a PR debacle.
Yeah,
I don't envy whoever has to clean this up.
And it just, and like to kind of piggyback on what you said, it just feeds that Kirby versus Lee type thing. It's just, this doesn't look good at all. Like, I mean, this is just, there's no way, no HR PR person could clean this up.
No.
They'll
be eating humble pie over this for a while.
Yeah.
So, Bob, good on you for jumping on this bandwagon. Good job. Well, I think, unless you guys, Nick, you have anything else to throw in there? Oh, you do.
I kind of do. Before we switch out of news, I'd like to bring up the Bad Idea announcement.
Yes.
Publisher entering the game.
Nick from the Ark. From the Ark. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, it's so this is coming from Dinesh, who pretty much spearheaded the Valiant 2012 relaunch, and he's got a lot of creative talent signed on with him. Matt Kent, Robert Vendetti, and apparently they've got some type of craft comic scheme going on where there's a very limited number of comic stores, about 20, who are going to have access to an in-print limited selection of comics that are oversized and very quality focused. So they have a curious business plan happening that just got announced today, and they announced the first series that's going to be coming from Matt Kent, and they have more announcements coming, but it looks like something that is totally different than anything else in the industry right now.
That's super weird. I mean, power to him for trying something different, but that's super weird.
Yeah, well, I said earlier, it's kind of like if Jeff Spicoli was going to start up a comic company. This is what it sounds like. Because now, don't get me wrong, the art and what has been released looks good. It does look good, but I mean, I get Mark Millar doing the Magic Order and stuff like that, and just doing one run and stuff like that. But gimmicky stuff like, the folks in Utah are going to get 2 copies and the folks in Florida are going to get 1 copy, and then we're just going to send 1 page to the people in New York. I get it. Okay. But really?
Like, apparently this is all going to be self-distributed. It's not going to be going through Diamond or any mass distribution to get to a lot of comic shops. So Bad Idea as a publishing company is working directly with these participating shops to carry their issues. And like I said, the idea of the publisher being called Bad Idea is pretty funny, considering everybody's first response is that might be a bad idea.
I mean, it does sound like a bad idea,
or at least a poorly thought out one.
Yeah,
I guess time will tell. All right, but yeah, they do have some solid A-list writers.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll see what happens. TKO broke the mold in their own way. So who's to say that Bad Idea don't do the same? I'm especially intrigued by this self-distribution aspect of it because Diamond has had a monopoly on distribution for 20-ish years now.
Yeah. And Diamond is the ticket master of comics, let me tell you.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe not that evil, but however, I will say, if you talk to any LCS guys who are around in the 80s or 90s when the direct market really took off and there were multiple distribution joints, it was a nightmare to order because you had to manage all these various companies worth of ways of ordering. So, for all its evil, so to speak, for being a monopoly, like Diamond simplified things in a lot of ways for retailers. So, but a monopoly is a monopoly. So power to the little guy. So, okay. Well, hey, I think we beat that horse to death. And I believe it's time to talk reviews. Let's kick things off this week with part 2 of our big Justice League changeover coverage. We got Justice League number 40 coming in from the new creative team of Robert Venditti and Doug Mahnke. So, in a quick nutshell, last issue, the end of Snyder's run, the heroes lost Perpetua 1, Doom took over the Earth, and the Quintessence ushered them into a big blue doorway where they ran and they said, okay, this is the last chance to save things. We didn't know it was going to happen. It was crazy. It was kind of a non-ending. It was kind of a down ending. So we're picking up, Venditti's got to pick up that baton and run with it. So what's he got up his sleeve? Well, first things first, it's kind of business as usual for the Justice League, which is very interesting. I kind of saw that coming. I don't know. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I had a feeling the Perpetua stuff would probably be put on the back burner for a little while. But we have got an issue with Sodom Yat. Former Green Lantern has crashed to Earth. His powers seemingly out of control at first. He is warning of a major incursion coming. As it turns out, it is the Superman's old foe from Krypton, or the relic of Krypton, I should say, the Eradicator. He is coming to town with a vengeance, and only the Justice League can stop him. Mike, what did you think about this issue?
Well, to take you and all the watchers back to last week, where I compared the Justice League to avocados and both guacamole and avocado toast. This was more of an avocado toast type of deal. Venditti takes over and gives us something that we can kind of sink our teeth into kind of right off the bat, and I kind of stepped back a little bit because I was like, well, am I enjoying this story because maybe Snyder's not doing this and I don't have to read a Snyder book 5 times to get the gist of it? Or is this just a really good book? And I say that for Snyder, like I said, and I compared him to, I can't remember. Either way. But anyway, I enjoyed Snyder's run, but it made me kind of think of like, well, the King, and Tynion the Fourth and stuff like that. Well, am I enjoying this because someone else is doing this? But this book was really enjoyable, It was one of those things where it's like you get Sodom Yat and kind of crashing to the earth, and everyone's kind of like, excuse me, where they're kind of figuring out what he's doing and realizing that, that he's the Superman mythos is not really kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the kryptonite can't what's the word I'm looking for?
I'll tell you what, while you're gathering your thoughts there, why don't we'll skip over to Nick real quick.
Yeah, skip over to Nick really quick.
Yeah, get it together, loser.
What do you got? Okay, yeah. So it's actually interesting that you brought up the point. am I enjoying this just because it's somebody different? Because Snyder has a pretty complicated, intricate tale that he wove over 39 issues. So Vendetti comes in, and honestly, did this book deliver anything that we hadn't seen before? I finished it, and I was a little bummed out that that's how we picked up on the Justice League running into this, closer opened a door that we didn't know what was coming up next. But it is solid Justice League storytelling. There's no denying that. I mean, this is somebody who understands the dynamics of the team and has a solid story to tell that, finds its way in a little bit more of an obscure DC lore with Lantern Yat and, bringing in the Eradicator. But ultimately, I don't really feel like the series picked up in a way that feels memorable after Scott Snyder's run. And that's a bit of a worry I have. As we continue, is it going to be kind of more of the same as Vendetti arguably focuses on larger things with his new company, A Bad Idea? There's going to be a lot of different dynamics that play into this series that it feels like a transitioning point for the Justice League. So let's do something that's maybe a bit more by the numbers. And that's okay. It's, there's some great moments in it. Superman saying, I try not to hate things, but I really dislike magic. That's such a quintessential Superman moment. I feel like, I don't really hate. Stuff like that, I feel like, it shows this is a veteran team that kind of knows what they're doing, and they're going to give you a book that you enjoy. But maybe the focus isn't here. They wanted to take the magic route, so you got Madame Xanadu coming in. But Justice League Dark is very preoccupied, so you can't really bring in all the players that you want to see in an arc like this. So it feels like it's it's restrained by a lot of different competing factors at DC Comics. And this is something that, they're finding their way, they're navigating those waters with an arguably more by the numbers Justice League book. Art's fantastic, direction's great. You got somebody falling to the sky, impending doom, rally the team, and here's the bad guy. I get it. Hopefully it does more by the next few issues, though, because Snyder left something huge, and those were big shoes to fill.
No, definitely on that. There's some, and I think you made some pretty valid points. Like, this is very, very meat and potatoes Justice League in a lot of ways. And it's to borrow a phrase our friend Cody used a few episodes back, it's a palate cleanser. The Snyder run is dense. It's dense with plot. It's dense with big ideas. It's dense with dialogue. It's just a lot to wrap your head around. This is not that. This is a summer popcorn movie. And I mean, that's fine. That's what the Justice League should be. It's the biggest stage in all of comics. It's the biggest heroes, the most mythic, and biggest mythology, the biggest archetypes all coming together. It should feel big, And I mean, God love him. That's why Grant Morrison's JLA run in the 90s still resonates today, because it just hit that formula so freaking well. So, yay, palate cleanser. Does it pick up right from where Snyder's run ended? Maybe, maybe not. I'm actually curious. Did either of you guys notice the thing with Alfred?
Yeah, I've seen. Was that? Yeah, that was when he's telling him to do the autopilot, and Alfred comes up on the
right.
And I mean, all throughout the DC books, there's been anytime Batman shows up here lately, they've made a point of mentioning Alfred's passing. Now, what's interesting here is we see just Batman by himself interacting with a Alfred on a computer screen. Then, like just a couple pages later, somebody mentions Alfred's death, and it got me to wondering, are we actually on an alternate Earth, and we as readers just don't know it yet. Did Venditti just drop a big clue and we didn't, and just kind of leave it laying there without drawing a lot of attention to it? So that's kind of interesting.
Like, I almost thought it maybe had been a Batman kind of visualizing that or projecting that, and maybe it just didn't translate as well as the creative team had hoped for. But that actually,
I was actually just looking at that sequence of panels, and he's in the bat plane, and he's sitting there. The screen's next to him. The next panel has Alfred in it, and they're talking. And then the third panel, after Alfred goes away, it does a dramatic close-up of that screen. Like, Venditti wants you to pay attention to what just happened with the screen.
Right.
Yeah.
So I have a feeling they're not actually on our Earth right now. And maybe they don't even realize it. I don't know. Yeah. So, we'll see. That's all we have to work with right now as far as that goes. Like, for me, this was a very enjoyable comic. It was nice to read an issue of Justice League and not feel drained afterwards. And I mean that in the kindest way possible. But there's always just a lot to wrap your head around in those Snyder issues, one way or another. So this was good. Excuse me. I am a huge Doug Mahnke fan. He is just one of DC's best, and I hope he never goes anywhere else because I just adore the way that he draws DC characters. They have a certain mythic, sort of detached from the rest of humanity look to him. I don't know how else to describe it. Like, you guys are nodding, so I know you know what I mean. But like, his people look bigger than life, but and that's what you want from the DC pantheon, This is a fun story. I'll be a little depressed if 2, 3, 4 issues from now, like, the story is still this relatively thin. But this is a good kickoff to the next phase of Justice League's evolution. What more can you ask for? So, Mike, did you find your thesaurus?
I did, after I completely jumbled that. Yeah, this was good. This was enjoyable. No more avocado references, because apparently that just set me into a different realm. But no, this was good. I enjoyed. Yeah, this is absolutely horrible. Anyway, no, I enjoyed this book. This was good, especially the dialogue between Soups and the Green Lantern, kind of like, oh, I'm just the guy from Kansas. That interchange was really good. And I think, Venditti really kind of brings in a new realm of Justice League. Kind of, you almost see the human spirit type of deal. And then at the end, when Batman is going to, find Madame Xanadu, and he's tangled up, and then he's like, oh, well, Wonder Woman said this was going to be different type deal. This is definitely I want to say night and day in a bad way, but night and day from a Snyder run. This was very, it was laid out. It was good. It's something that's going to grab you in. Definitely something that I'm going to probably check out for the next couple of issues. This was really good. And I think bringing in the whole story of the Eradicators and what the Justice League is going to do, because if they're invulnerable to kryptonite with all the Daxamites and stuff like that, what are they going to do? And that's what kind of is drawing me into the next couple of issues, because now I want to know what Venditti is going to do, because he has set this stage for, well, okay, you have, Superman, and then you have, the Daxamites, you have the Eradicator, you're doing the Superman mythos. So it's very interesting to see where he is going to take this. But overall, art, writing, this was a good book. I think this is a good jumping on point, especially for someone like me who does his Justice League and collected works. I'm not ashamed to admit that, I go to group meetings for that, by the way, for you DC folks. But yeah, sorry. Anyway, but yeah, no, it's good. It was enjoyable book, and it definitely something that I'm gonna catch on for the next couple of issues for sure.
Awesome. Nick, do you have any final thoughts on it?
I guess really the only way to follow Snyder's high, big concept-driven story is with more of a character-driven look at the Justice League. I think Mike hits a good point on, the Superman talk. You've got a lot with Wonder Woman going on. I think there are a lot of these moments. Flash has a great moment. Are you doubting me? But I think that's kind of the best way, I guess. If I'm supposed to follow a high concept-driven story like Snyder, that seems like an appropriate way to do so. So I like that approach.
Well, and I mean, here's the thing. When you've got a big iconic run or just a big run in general, maybe it was a big, long, crappy run. I don't know. You can the incoming writer that follows it has one of two choices. They can either do more of the same, or they can swerve left and put their own stamp on it. And Venditti is wisely choosing to put his own stamp on it. He's a hell of a talented writer. Hawkman, it's maybe stumbled a little bit in terms of focus because they lost Brian Hitch on the art, but it's still a solid read. If from him, if nothing else. If you didn't read Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps, you missed out on some of the most rip-roaring Green Lantern fun to have been had in forever. So the dude's got game. I think he's probably exactly what Justice League needs right now. So power to him. So yeah, that's been Justice League number 40 from DC. So coming in hot from Marvel this week, we've got X-Men Fantastic Four number 1 of 4. All right, guys, Dawn of X time. We're talking about Chip Zdarsky. We're talking about Terry Dodson on cover and interior art. Laura Martin on covers. This is a big one. So without spending the next hour trying to explain what's all going on in the X-Men world right now, all the mutants in the world, except for a few, are living on the island of Krakoa. Now, one of the most famous non-X-Men mutants is, of course, Franklin Richards, son of Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman. Now, the X-Men kind of just decide it's time for Franklin to come be with his kind of people because humans cannot help him or give him what he needs as a mutant. Now, also playing out in this is the fact that over in the main FF book, Franklin's powers have gradually been weakening. Now, he is actually an Omega level mutant. There's been a lot of back and forth, regression, power dampening. Now he's a little kid. Now he's not, et cetera, with that character over the last decades. And now he's at this point where each time he uses his power, he loses his power a little bit more. So he's coping with that. He's not happy that his father, the smartest guy in the world, cannot figure out how to help him. And, he's a teenager now, so he's in a teenage snit about it. And lo and behold, as all this coming on, here comes the X-Men with what sounds like a kind of cool idea. Whisk him away to a tropical island paradise and possibly fix his own powers. So, Nick, go time. X-Men FF, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, this is a rebellious teenager story set within the drama that is the X-Men Dawn of X. And I think it's an interesting concept, and this creative team obviously knows what they're doing. And, this isn't something that feels like one of the one-shots of an event that you really don't care to read. This one has a story to tell. It's based on this character, Franklin, that I think it centralizes around Franklin, but it uses a lot of both of X-Men and Fantastic Four to kind of help create sides almost in this warring family drama. And I think out of that, you get something cool. The God theory, the God power theory that is, I guess, the introduction of an explanation for Franklin's powers. and why they're depleting. And that's kind of the driving force behind Franklin's decision or desire to leave the family, the Fantastic Four family, and join up with the X-Men and kind of go to Krakoa and figure out what they're offering. I think it's a solid reason. I think it's something that anybody would be like, yeah, obviously that's something you need to do. So it's hard not to root for them, but it's still hard not to see the X-Men as this elitist society now that are just dropping in and doing whatever they want at will. And it's a crazy thing. And I think, this teenage rebellious drama that spins out of that, or that boils out of that, is something that feels real amongst all of this, if that's even possible. And I liked that. But I wanted more of that focus on the drama and the tension and that warring between families, because it was pretty lighthearted in its execution. I mean, you've got Stu like getting Magneto up in this little ball, so he's like all in a fetal position, like going through the air. And there's like a lot of these silly moments that I thought it kind of pulled me out of it. And when I wanted to be, tied up in the drama with Franklin deciding where he's going to go, and Wolverine showing up, and there's this huge fight about to happen between the two families. But that's not really the story we're getting. And I'm okay with that. But it was something that I felt like it used the tone that hit on the teenage rebellious on a bit too lighthearted, humorous aspect, when it could have gotten more drama. But it sets up a cool story, and it uses a lot of different moving pieces at Marvel. So I honestly feel bad if you haven't kept up with everything that's gone on with the Dawn of X. If you just jump into this, it's a learning curve. But at this point, you're kind of expected to have this load of information, and that's just the way it goes right now. But
I feel so terrible for somebody that's been away from comics for a while and loved the X-Men, and now they're trying to get back into it. I can't think of a bigger paradigm shift in a corner of a comics world than what's happening at X-Men right now.
Yeah, true.
Like, not at all.
It's absorbed all these other titles and series like Fantastic Four too, so everybody's getting embroiled in that controversy.
Yeah,
and it is a lot to keep up with. I found myself keeping up with the X-Men more than I ever have, because it's so fundamental to the Marvel universe right now. If you're keeping up with the events and what's going on, X-Men is fundamental to that. In this story, I think it garners weight or importance out of that significance. So you feel like Franklin's journey or his conflict is important to the overarching narrative here. And
Nick? Mike? Oh, Mike, we lost Nick. Oh, there he is. There he is. That was weird. Nick, are you there? All right. Nick's having technical difficulties. Mike, why don't you give me some thoughts on what you thought about this?
So picking up where Nick left off, I'm going to start, because he kind of already touched on God power and stuff like that. So I'm going to start off with Franklin trying to storm into Krakoa, and his dad, Reed, who I have always held into high regards, kind of masking his mutant abilities, and now he can't go into Krakoa. Now, Reed has always been a subject of, and pardon my French, kids, earmuffing here. He's always been an ass of a father. He said that, what he did, he masked, Franklin's mutant abilities to protect him. Well, I guess, Reed's big mission is, I kind of summed him up with PETA, right? Their hearts are in the right area, but their mind and their actions are completely opposite of what they want to do. So Reed loves his kids, but his mind and his actions are completely so far-fetched that he's willing to just harm his kids, So Franklin is not going to understand this, and that's what this, to me, that's what this book is about. at least the first issue, is the degradation of Franklin's powers. You know, we see him and Ben talking in the diner. If Reed is the smartest person, why can't he cure, Ben? Why can't he cure Franklin? Let's get down to the details. Love the Fantastic Four. I was raised on Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four, but this book, once again, is the ultimate telling of Reed kind of being the lovable father, but also kind of, the male anatomy part. That just kind of happens. Like, he wants the best for his family, but let's be honest. I mean, Reed Richards is Reed Richards, but we see the battle between the X-Men and the Fantastic Four, and as Nick said before, Sue puts Magneto in a bubble, and Storm comes in, the Marauders are happening, and it's just like a big, kerfluffle, and it's like, what do you do, but these issues, I think, could tell a bigger story of Franklin. And for me, I want these issues to be about Franklin. I don't want these issues to be about Fantastic Four or the X-Men. I want these issues to be about, to me, and we could argue this for days and years and months, is Franklin Richards the strongest character in the Marvel universe? I mean, let's be honest. I mean, how many people have resurrected Galactus? It's one of those things, but for me, it was great. It had everything. I mean, for me, being a bigger Fantastic Four fan, just seeing the family kind of group together a little bit and kind of put the X-Men in their place, sans Wolverine. We'll get about that later, but it was good, and I think there's a little deeper thing going on with Franklin. I would hope that we would see something deeper with Franklin, and why the X-Men all of a sudden want to come grab Franklin. I mean, obviously this is the first time we've seen this. We've seen this, I think it was in the early, maybe late 80s when they did the first X-Men Fantastic Four, crossover type deal. But, my question is, and maybe this isn't really a question, more of a comparison of Professor X and Reed kind of, being the same person, and the fact that the manipulation of young people almost, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but Professor X, how many years has he brung in young people to do his bidding, in a sense, not for bad, but is Reed and Professor X all that different in their grand scheme of things? And that's another angle that I kind of, after reading this book a couple of times, kind of came up with, is like, to me, Reed and Professor X are almost the same person in a sense. Matt?
No, there's you touched on something that really stood out to me in reading this. And it's yet again a situation where the X-Men are being portrayed as the aggressors.
Yeah.
And there's kind of been this weird trend at Marvel with them for the last decade or so. It really started with Avengers versus X-Men. And you know what? I'll admit it. I love Avengers versus X-Men. But I mean, I'll be the first to tell you, the X-Men are very, very out of character in that series.
Yeah.
And then you've got Inhumans versus X-Men, and then you've got X-Men versus FF, and all of these series have this weird read on the X-Men where they're the aggressors. And one of the weird hallmarks of Hickman's run has been watching the X-Men move closer to Magneto rather than opposite happening. I mean, they're happy working together now. I mean, they worked together in the past, but it's always been kind of portrayed as this fraught, sort of tense relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're just like, BFFs. And Apocalypse sits at the table with them, and Sinister sits at the table, and Mystique, and Sebastian Shaw, all these very bad dudes.
Mm-hmm.
And at this, Nick touched on this. If his internet ever gets back, we can hopefully get him back in the conversation. But they come off like this elitist attitude.
Absolutely, especially in this book.
Full display here.
Yeah.
In this issue, like they just boldly walk into the FF's home and be like, "Okay, your son's coming with us now because he's a he needs to be with his own time." Are you freaking kidding me with this? No, come on, like, come on. These teams have history, okay?
Yeah,
I don't care how special your Krakoan society is and everything, and how you've just decided that you're gonna be better than everybody because you're the next step in evolution, and you're not afraid to swagger around to speaking to that. And don't just, Mike, if I just walked into your house and I said, I think your daughter would be better off living with me, you'd beat the crap out of me, okay? And you know what? That is exactly what Invisible Woman did, and she was to do so.
Right. But, and what killed me about that is, like, after that, those couple of panels where Sue kind of did the motherly instinct thing, here comes Reed and was like, "Oh, wait, don't hurt him, don't kill him." Like, wait a second. These people here, regardless if you're friends, they're here to take your son. They're here to take, like, what do you mean don't do that? Don't hurt him. Like, what are you talking about? Yeah,
exactly.
I feel like I'm very conflicted with.
Hey, Nick's back, everybody. All right.
Yeah, you'll have to excuse my East Texas internet. I'm thinking about switching back to dial-up because it's probably an improvement.
Ooh.
That means you got to go to Walmart and get that CD that put in your computer and stuff.
So I like the discussion on X-Men being elitist because arguably it is in response to decades of disenfranchisement on behalf of the mutants. It's an interesting take to see them almost in a role reversal and say, we've put all of that behind us. We're above you being able to even do that to us. And now we're seeing kind of the X-Men take shape outside of that influence. So it feels elitist, maybe because we've only seen it through this lens of disenfranchisement. But it still creates a weird conflict in the Marvel universe where, you see them going up against the Marvel's first family and it just feels out of character. And it's a strange thing they're toying with, but it feels like it's a part of this much larger positioning strategy for the X-Men in their social relevance. And this issue kind of brings those concepts to light, I feel like.
Well, and you're not wrong. Like, this is definitely a distillation of the way the X-Men have positioned themselves as being above humanity. Mm-hmm. And I get that. But it also it magnifies that very flaw about the current state of the X-Men. The FF are 100% in the right to react the way that they do. Now, looking at it from the other perspective, nobody throughout this entire issue asks Franklin what he wants to do.
I know, right?
Somebody does. Is it Storm?
But he's old enough to make decisions. Hey, do you want to go hang out with the X-Men for 2 or 3 days a week? Cool, go do that. We like them. Teamed up with them and fought Beyonder. It's all good. And
hang out with the Celestials. Yeah, that's good.
Why not? It's not like they didn't spend 3 years mapping out a new multiverse while they weren't being published or anything. So it's not like going to a weird island in the South Pacific is really that big of a deal. Gotta say. So, I mean, both teams could have handled the situation a lot better, but the X-Men kind of played into their own stereotype. And, look, again, the FF reacted exactly the way a family should react in a situation like that. Mm-hmm. So, so it goes. The art, man, let's talk about the art for a second, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Always a treat to get Terry Dodson on interiors. He mostly just does cover work these days. So, but yeah, the dude's just such an amazing talent. It's kind of interesting the way he's developed and evolved now to his own unique style. If you go back to when he was first breaking out in the 90s, he and 90s Brian Hitch actually have very, very similar styles circa 95, 96. And it's just always interesting to me to see how those artists, 25 years ago, who were so similar, have branched apart from each other in such unique and compelling ways.
Yeah.
But I mean, and you've got Laura Martin on colors. I mean, she's a legend, one of the absolute best in the business today. And overall, complaints about the X-Men aside, this was a good read.
Yeah,
I enjoyed this comic. It's going to be real interesting to see what happens over the course of the next 3 issues.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think we lost Nick again. He got sucked into the abyss of East Texas. So we can't get his final thoughts. He's gone. He's gone. There.
It's just us. It's just
Nick?
us.
Am I back?
Maybe your arched eyebrows were back briefly.
Yeah.
Like we
missed the arched eyebrows for
a moment. I think he needs to get back on the dial-up, Mike. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, Mike, final thoughts on X-Men FF?
Final thoughts is as an FF fan, I mean, I'm going to always lean towards the first family, but overall this was a good book, and I think the story is proportionate to a limited series. I don't think this is would work as a ongoing thing, but I think overall to start off this story, the creative team is just on point. I think it's rare nowadays to have the writing, the art, and the inks and everything kind of line up to have, and I don't want to say the perfect story, but just have something that really just makes you want to go back and read it and page for page and really dissect the panels and stuff like that. And for me, that's what this book was.
Yeah.
And I think to dive in just to the whole Franklin, to me, the more interesting is, and especially for maybe the watchers out there that don't know about Franklin Richards, this is the perfect opportunity to kind of really dive in to, in my opinion, what is probably the most powerful person in the Marvel Universe, kind of like pound for pound type deal. So this could be really intriguing, the next couple of issues of what Chip and company decide to do with this. And I would probably be remiss to say that this would be the last Fantastic Four X-Men book that we probably do on the show. I probably end up maybe doing like issue 4 or something like that.
Hey,
but,
so I'm all down for an arc review. Nick,
absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, he's back, everybody.
Hey, woo.
We love Nick.
Nick, final thoughts on X-Men FF #1?
So the final thoughts are ultimately, yeah, both sides could have handled it better. That was something that should have happened from the start. The drama that came out of it feels like that's the best part of the issue, but that's not what the focus was. So hopefully there's a more consequential approach to it in the future and less of a lighthearted take. I might check it out in the future though. I'll probably stick along.
Oh, definitely, definitely. Like with a creative team like this, you can't not read this comic.
Nah, I mean, it's just one that you're going to pick up and read. Like, who are we kidding?
Absolutely. So, okay, that has been X-Men Fantastic Four #1 from Marvel, courtesy of Chip Zdarsky, Terry Dodson, and I just went blank on his wife's name. Rachel Dodson?
Rachel?
Yes, Rachel Dodson. Geez, shame on me.
Maybe.
And Laura Martin on colors. So, cool. So let's do our final segment. Oh, Mike, did you have something? No? Okay. He's
no,
I
didn't. Go ahead.
Okay. You're doing the Mike Tyson.
No, I was just doing when you comment on Rachel, I was just doing the cha-cha type of drum. So my bad for the it's probably a connection thing. Don't worry about it.
It's all good. Someday we'll get this internet thing figured out. So Nick, before we lose you again into the abyss of East Texas internet, what have you been reading and what are you looking forward to?
So I recently had the pleasure of picking up Justice League Dark for reviews. I'll be taking over at the new creative team in issue 20. So I've been doing a deep dive into Atinian the Force run, and it is as brilliant as everybody says it is. Oh my gosh. Spins out of Wonder Woman's Witching Hour event. Mm-hmm. So you kind of go into that, and I read the first arc that spun out of that and then fell out right when the Lords of Chaos happened, which was such a mistake because the Lords of Chaos was just so cool, just so badass. And now I'm almost all the way caught up. I'm on issue about 16 or 17 in the Witching War. Lots of vampires, lots of cool stuff, right up my alley. Love it.
Oh yeah, can't go wrong with Justice League Dark. I mean, I'm all for whatever the new creative team has to bring to the table. No. Ram V is writing it. I don't remember who's on art, but this has just been a stellar, just stealth DC book.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, there's a lot of different characters that are kind of stealing the show. And Bobo is just amazing. Like, it's hard.
Gotta love Detective Chimp.
Yeah, and Man-Bat, I think, is kind of the one that brings the heart to the whole series, and he's the one I want to see every page.
Yes, and it props also have to go to whoever had the great idea to make Swamp Thing look like Alan Moore. That's brilliant.
The roots and the moss has extended into a bit more Alan Moore-like shape.
Yes, absolutely. God love it.
Spot on.
Yeah, it's great. But what I'm looking forward to, fuck it, Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn. Oh, I am ready for it. I'm excited for it. I don't have time for the people who are worried about the Birds of Prey subtitle. I'm excited. I think it's going to be really amazing. Its whole reviews are great. It looks like it's going to have a strong performance. So good things all around. I'm here for it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Mike, what about you? What have you been reading? What are you looking forward to?
But I've been reading a newer book called The After Realm from Image. It's from Michael Avon, who did Powers. Yes, exactly. So this is a longer book. It's a quarterly book. It follows the story of Una, who is an elven ranger, and it's set during the aftermath of Ragnarok, and she has to fulfill her friend's oath in order to save the 9 realms in which she lives in. If you're a fan of like D&D type of fantasy, elven type of fantasy, this is the book that you want to get into. This is like some really good stuff that I kind of had on my radar, but it's one of those books, and not to go back, it's almost like a Count, Crowley feel, because I was like, okay, I've been kind of looking at it, but I was like, wow, this is really good. This is better than what the previews and the professional reviews have been saying. But this is really good if you're into like the D&D, or if you're in a type of like elven, ranger type of fantasy.
I have an elf quest deal.
Yeah, not so much into ElfQuest, but in that neighborhood. You may not want to buy a house for ElfQuest, but in that neighborhood. But yeah, definitely check out the After 'Em. It was really good. And what I'm looking forward to, I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit, and Wolverine, the new volume of Wolverine. I can't wait for that. I have been anxiously waiting to get my mitts on some new stuff, and can't wait till that gets released.
Shoot, yeah, son. So, God, I've been reading a lot of stuff. I got, hold on, let me just grab it because it's too cool not to look at.
Matt will be back in a little bit while we're at commercial break. Oh, hey, Matt's back.
I snagged a near mint copy of Superman versus Shazam oversized one shot from 1978.
Nice.
What? Got a steal of a price on it too. It's a really cool oversized treasury. Rich Buckler on the art with Dick Giordano on inks. It's just a gorgeous book to look at. The story makes absolutely no sense. This ding dong wants to slam Earth S and Earth 1 together. I'm bored or something. And it was written by Gary Conway, kind of at the beginning of his 10 years or so at DC, but it's just a super fun book. I've also been reading a little bit of a forgotten miniseries called JSA versus Cobra that came out in 2009. And it was one of those books that when it came out, nobody paid attention to because it came out right as Jeff Johns' run on JSA was ending. And this thing came out and it was kind of just like, why does this even exist? JSA versus Cobra, whatever, right? It's so freaking good. As somebody that loves Mr. Terrific, this comic is a great showcase for him. It's got some fantastic art. Unfortunately, I don't have an issue on hand. I'm not going to run halfway across my house to get one. But
you got time. Go ahead, go real quick.
Nah, we won't do that to Bird on editing. But Eric Troutman wrote it, and covers by Gene Haw. It's a cool series. You can pick it up super cheap in the dollar bins. I'm always recommending dollar bin stuff to whomever. It's, because we all love comics, and if you can find something good for cheap, then power to you. So, so looking ahead, I'm actually, shame on me, I am not sure what's coming out offhand this coming week. So I'm actually going to say I got some, I spent a little bit of Christmas money that I had left over on gift card for Barnes & Noble, and I got some cool trades. I got the complete Commandy by Jack Kirby omnibus. I can't wait to tear into that. And then I got the just released this week Aquaman Death of a Prince that collects the stories from the late 70s that killed his son. Pretty seminal stuff for the time.
Sounds awesome.
So that's what I'm looking forward to. So, gentlemen, I think that's it. This has been episode 65 of the Comic Watchers Show. Thank you so much for listening. Next week, I hope you like Birds of Prey because it's going to be all about the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn. Oh, yeah. Guys, thank you so much for your hanging out with me for the last hour and change. It's always a pleasure. Thank you all for listening. This has been, excuse me, the Comic Watchers Show, which is a part of comic-watch.com, pro news and reviews written by fans for fans. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.